We will just wait 2 seconds or so just to let people get settled in as they're coming in from the waiting room. And as you're getting settled in, feel free to use the chat box. You can introduce yourself, say where you're calling in from, and perhaps tell us in the chat, why you're interested in starting a chapter in your area or what drew you to attend today's session. Okay, I think we're going to get started for the sake of time. This is a 1-hour session and we want to use every minute of this session. So please do continue to type your introductions in the chat if you'd like. And we're going to get started now. So again, thank you for joining us for this online info session on how to start a World Beyond War chapter in your area. My name is Greta Zaro, and I'm the organizing director with World Beyond War. Some Zoom housekeeping before we get started. We will be using the chat box today for any questions and comments, so please do use that. And we will get to the Q&A towards the end of today's session. And we are recording the session. We will be posting this on our YouTube channel afterwards, and we'll also send out an email with the recording, so it's okay if you have to leave at any time. We also have the closed captions on today. You can click on the CC Live Transcript button, which is normally at the bottom of your Zoom screen, to enable the captions. And a reminder that the captions are done by robots. They are getting better, but please excuse any errors with the transcription. So in today's session, we will first watch a 15-minute video or so that kind of gives an introduction to what is World Beyond War, what is a chapter, to kind of give some context to this conversation. And then we will hear from some of World Beyond War staff and chapter coordinators from around the world about their experiences. And then we will hear from you all about your questions about how to get started in your area. So let's just jump into the video. Give me 30 seconds or so. I'm going to pull it up and then we'll go from there. Hi, today I'm going to give a short presentation about what is World Beyond War, our mission, campaigns, and what a chapter is. Our mission at World Beyond War is to abolish the institution of war. We oppose all types of war, all types of weapons, and any means of violence. We operate in a decentralized or distributed organizing model, meaning that we don't have any offices, we don't have a headquarters, we all work remotely, and we have a very small staff team whose role is really to provide training and resources and support to amplify the volunteers and chapters around the world who are organizing locally in their communities. We have people who have signed our Declaration of Peace in 193 countries and counting, and that's a great entry point to joining the work, is to sign on to the Peace Pledge and say that you're in agreement with that mission to end all war. We currently have 25 chapters in 14 countries around the world. A chapter can be thought of as a branch of World Beyond War. It uses the name of World Beyond War, such as Cameroon for a World Beyond War or California for a World Beyond War. It takes on the name, the brand of World Beyond War, and works very closely with the staff who provide support for the chapter. We also have 97 affiliates. An affiliate is an organization that is independent from World Beyond War in the sense that it has its own structure and its own mission, brand, etc., but it partners with World Beyond War and collaborates with us on various campaigns and events. We have over 800 organizations around the world who have signed our Peace Pledge. That's also a great entry point, maybe for an organization that doesn't have capacity to become an affiliate and partner with us on a regular basis. Anyway, any type of organization can still sign on to the Peace Pledge, and those organizations are listed on our website. This is the Declaration of Peace that I've been mentioning. So if you go to WorldBeyondWar.org, there are versions of this for both individuals and organizations to sign. And again, it's laying out our mission to end all war and to advocate for a just and sustainable peace This is a great entry point and a great way that chapters can build their membership, is to encourage people to sign on to the Declaration of Peace and start that conversation. This is our theory of change that lays out basically the ways in which we operate and how we approach tackling the institution of war in basically three main ways: education, educating about the problems of war, debunking what we call the myths of war, and laying out the proven nonviolent alternatives to war; plus action, meaning taking action locally in your community to chip away at the institution of war, and that can take many different forms, such as divesting a city from weapons, shutting down a local military base in your area, etc. And then media. That includes both creation of media to put out an alternative narrative, such as our billboard campaign, where we put up anti-war, pro-peace billboards around the world, or our monthly podcast, where we share inspiring examples of anti-war and pro-peace activism and education around the world. So that media work looks like both the creation of our own media, telling our own story, and then also interacting with other media outlets, for example, speaking on radio shows, publishing op-eds in various outlets, and monitoring and criticizing the pro-war mainstream media narrative, which we strive to be a counterweight to that. These are some of our guiding principles, and I've mentioned a few of them already. I'll just highlight a few. Again, we are abolitionist in our approach, meaning that we do advocate for our ultimate goal is to abolish the institution of war. We are both pro-peace and anti-war, and you've probably been hearing that in the way that I'm talking, because we do like to include both of those components, both to criticize the war machine, but also to put forth an alternative narrative, a peaceful alternative, advocating for a culture of peace, really a paradigmatic cultural shift that is needed. We are global in our approach, and that was something from day one. We knew that to tackle something as large as the institution of war, you need to do it in an international way. We need to include all voices from all perspectives of how the war machine impacts people, because it really has so many multifaceted impacts. We are nonpartisan in our approach, and that's one of the things that we're able to do, is to reach across the aisle and bring people from all different backgrounds to come together. They may not agree on any other issue, but we've been able to build bridges with people in various groups who can come together on the issue of ending all war. We are intersectional in our approach, and that's something I also want to highlight. We have various materials that showcase those multifaceted social, economic, and environmental impacts of war, such as the fact that war fuels bigotry and racism, such as the fact that war threatens the environment and is one of the leading causes of environmental damage, such as the fact that war sucks out money from the economy that could be used on any other thing, such as healthcare, education, etc. So we like to showcase those intersectional aspects and build bridges with people from a variety of different backgrounds, not just isolated to the peace movement itself. And another thing that I'll highlight is that we're a movement builder, in the sense that World Beyond War has really taken on this role, especially since the beginning of the pandemic to now. We've taken on this role of providing a lot of technical support, and I'll say administrative support, for other organizations, networks, and coalitions of groups around the world, where we often host webinars using our Zoom capabilities. We build websites. We provide platforms for petitions and other online tools. So we've very much kind of grown into that role of a movement builder, of providing these sort of structures, frameworks, and technical skills to support people's campaigns and events. This is one framework that I like to use to lay out our work, in terms of, number one, debunking those myths of war. And again, we have web pages and videos and various resources on all of these things. So debunking those myths of war, and then laying out, number two, the whys, the 7 whys, the reasons to end war. And I've listed some of those already, such as the fact that war threatens the environment, the fact that war is immoral, etc. And then that third component is the how, and that is what we call the AGSS, the Alternative Global Security System, which is our vision for a world beyond war. It's our blueprint for how to get there, and that is our book. And then we've developed many materials that spin off of that book, such as webinars and fact sheets and online courses. And in terms of the how, the AGSS lays out three main strategies, which are to demilitarize security, to manage conflict non-violently, and to create a culture of peace. And our book lays out how to do all three of those things in detail. These are some of the many, many resources that we provide. As you've already started to hear, a lot of what we do is creating these resources that can be utilized by activists around the world, both educational and organizing resources. So on the educational front, I've mentioned already, like our fact sheets, for example. Another key educational resource is our Mapping Militarism project, which is a series of maps which we update on an annual basis that maps out where militarism is around the world, where troops are stationed, where weapons are placed, where bases are located, etc. Another great resource is our Peace Almanac, which is a calendar of peace holidays and important moments in the peace movement. There's an entry for every single day of the year, and that's a great tool that you can use to organize an event around a certain day in the Peace Almanac, to publish an op-ed or get media attention around a certain day in the almanac. And that's basically part of our strategy of creating a culture of peace, is to shift away from celebrating militaristic holidays and to use the Peace Almanac instead. In terms of some of those organizing resources, some of those are listed on the right-hand side here. And I've mentioned a few already in terms of what we can provide to support activists, like webinar hosting, meeting facilitation, graphic design, website design, organizing trainings, etc. So what is a chapter? A chapter advances World Beyond War's mission to abolish war and hosts events, campaigns, and activities that are in alignment with that mission. And really, it can take so many different forms depending on what's happening in your community and what the issues are. So it's really up to the chapters to decide, what their members care about, what resonates in their community, and to focus on a localized focus that falls within World Beyond War's mission. And there is often a local-global dynamic in the sense that a chapter may raise attention to a certain local issue that then the global World Beyond War network can get global media attention for that issue, such as a military base in your community or something like that. At the same time, a chapter may also participate in World Beyond War global events and days of action, such as a day of action to end the war in Yemen, for example, or the International Day of Peace on September 21st is another common day of action, or other campaigns that we may be working on a global basis. A chapter can tap into those and host local events that amplify those as well. At the minimum, we ask chapters to host 4 events per year, and those can take many, many different forms, whether it's a small meeting or strategy group, whether it's a book club, a film screening, a guest speaker, a rally, a direct action, a war abolition walk. There's so many different forms that those events can take. Some of the benefits of being a chapter I've mentioned already basically is the support of myself as the organizing director and also all of our staff team to provide resources and training based on your chapter's needs. We host at least 4 meetings per year with all of the chapter coordinators around the world, which is a great opportunity to network with other chapters and to hear, what's working, what's not. And we also often include trainings as part of those meetings based on chapters' requests, such as, how to utilize Twitter for activism purposes, or how to create graphics using Canva, or other things like that chapters request. We do provide a free web page on our website for all of the chapters to highlight what you're doing, and we can also provide digital organizing support, such as how to build an email list and how to set up online petitions and other online tools. And we can help to publicize your events and recruit volunteers. And also another great benefit of being part of the World Beyond War network is that we can share what you're doing with our global audience through our email list, website, and social media, for example, to amplify and shine international attention to an issue in your area and to help raise awareness and change that issue. Here are some common Q&A about chapters. Number one, does World Beyond War ever support violence, war, or weapons in some circumstances? The answer is no. As I mentioned earlier, we do take an abolitionist approach. Although we are often able to collaborate with other groups that may not take that abolitionist stance, we have been able to find various points of connection, even with other groups that don't go that far, but we can collaborate in limited ways. Number two, are chapters expected to fundraise for World Beyond War? Fundraising is not a requirement. We do, recommend if chapters have it within their capacity that they can fundraise for World Beyond War, but that is optional. In addition to fundraising for the global organization, chapters are also certainly welcome to fundraise locally for their own needs, and we have several chapters that do that. We also have many chapters that operate on basically no budget, just as volunteers. So there's lots of different models, and we can work with your chapter if you're interested in learning how to fundraise. We do provide trainings on that. Number three, can World Beyond War or my local chapter endorse a political candidate for office? The answer is no. As I said earlier, we are nonpartisan, and also depending on our legal structure in certain countries, such as in the US, we are a nonprofit. We cannot even legally endorse any political candidates running for office. So we always do take that nonpartisan approach. And lastly, what is the legal structure of a chapter? Again, this is sort of very dependent on different regions around the world. Some chapters do incorporate, and other chapters are unincorporated groups. So you can talk with us and we can figure out whatever the best structure is for your area. All right, that's a wrap. You can follow us on all the major social media channels. Visit our website, WorldBeyondWar.org, for more information, and don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks.
Great. And with that introduction, I want to pass it off to some of our staff and chapter coordinators from around the world who are going to share their personal experiences of organizing locally in their area and hopefully inspire you with some of the actions that they've done. So first, we're going to hear from Rachel Small, who is World Beyond War's Canada organizer on staff.
Hello, my name is Rachel. It's nice to meet you all, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have a little bit more conversation at the end. I'm seeing that some people are having maybe a little bit of bad internet connections. We are recording this meeting, so if you end up needing to drop off or your internet dies out, we will send the recording to you after, and you can catch up on what you missed. And if you need a one-on-one conversation with a staff member to follow up after, we're always here for that. So I think that the presentation we saw does a great sort of overview of what being a chapter with World Beyond War can mean and how we can support, etc. I thought what I could do that might be helpful is just to show, okay, what does this actually look like in practice? So I am the Canada organizer with World Beyond War, as Greta mentioned. So I am working every day to try to support anti-war movement building across Canada and to support our chapters across Canada. So I'm going to focus on showing some photos and telling a few stories about what our Canadian chapters are doing. A lot of it is similar to what chapters are doing in other parts of the world as well, however. All right. Can we see that okay? All right, so chapters taking action across Canada. I want to share different types of examples of what chapters have been doing here. So first, I wanted to give an example of something a lot of our chapters across Canada do, which is join countrywide campaigns. So they might be doing an action in their local city, but it's being amplified because at the same time, people in 10 other cities or towns across the country are doing similar or related actions with a shared goal. So in this case, this was a big campaign that World Beyond War was one of the leaders of, but other organizations did too, to try to get Canada to stop sending billions of dollars worth of tanks to Saudi Arabia. Given what was happening with Saudi Arabia and Yemen, given the way those tanks are being used within Saudi Arabia itself, etc. So these are examples of what different chapters and groups across the country did. In some places where there was less capacity, it might just be a few people going to their local member of parliament's office and delivering information, holding a sign. In the top left corner, this is at the Prime Minister's office in the capital, and there was a bit of a bigger mobilization. Here in Toronto, a number of us did a banner drop over the rails where the tanks are being transported. So an example of chapters showing up locally as part of a bigger movement. I wanted to also show some pictures of our Montreal chapter, but I know Kim is also presenting later, but just a great example of the Montreal chapter showing up as part of that same campaign. So we had worked nationally to get 68 different organizations to sign on to these demands, but then it was very powerful to have them personally delivered to the relevant office in Montreal. Another countrywide campaign is the No Fighter Jets campaign, focused on what the Canadian military wanted to equip itself with in terms of weapons. This has been a years-long effort to try to oppose this purchase, and our chapters have been involved in lots of different ways, whether it is showing up sort of at protests, doing some cool art where they make huge banners and have them visible from the sky, or doing some behind the scenes work of helping to put together reports, doing some graphic design, doing some research to amplify what's happening across the country. One of our chapter members from Vancouver decided that he was going to do a fast. He was going to not eat for 14 days as part of his protest against the fighter jets. So this is some photos of Brendan and the media coverage he got for taking this stand. But because he wasn't just alone, because he was part of a World Beyond War chapter, and through that part of bigger networks, about 100 people ended up joining him in fasting for at least a day or two. So here are photos of people across the country. This was at a particularly bad moment early in the pandemic when it was very hard to gather outside or to do more conventional protests. So this was a really powerful way that people were able to come together and take a stand, in many cases from their homes, with Brendan. I also wanted to share quickly examples of chapters joining global days of action. So this was part of the global mobilization to stop Lockheed Martin, one of the world's biggest weapons producers. So here are some photos of folks in our Collingwood chapter and in Montreal showing up on that day to call out Lockheed Martin. Other campaigns have looked much more local. Here are some examples of our chapter in Vancouver, focusing on passing resolutions at their local city council. So this is sort of a classic example, I think, of local action with global ramifications. A lot of our chapter work really could be summed up in that way, thinking global, acting local. So in this case, getting their city to support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Canada might not have signed on yet, but dozens of cities across Canada now have, thanks to these kinds of local advocacy. Here you can see a chapter member presenting to City Hall when meetings were virtual at that moment. Also, not just passing it at City Hall, but also involving the community and holding ceremonies to commemorate the victims of nuclear bombings at the same time as they're pushing to change policy around it. Here's another example of community action. Our Collingwood chapter is in a very small city, or maybe you could say a big town And I wanted to show that chapters don't only need to be in cities. There's something really powerful about bringing your community on board with you and engaging locally in a small town. So in this case, around Remembrance Day, they have been able to involve their local legion, involve veterans. I think some people might imagine that these would be groups of people who are sort of opposed to each other or clashing, but in this way, they've been able to come together and, for example, make wreaths that have both the red poppies and the white poppies, and to engage their community in thinking critically about peace and not only about commemorating war. These are some recent photos of some cones, not drones actions across the country. This was a way to support a campaign to try to get Canada to not buy armed drones, but wanting to do it in a way that was fun, that was out in our communities, out in our city parks, engaging people around us. So these are some, these are in Toronto and Montreal, giving out some free ice cream. There are so many more examples I can share. I'm aware that the types of examples I shared here tend to be the ones that we have really nice photos of. Some things we tend to not have great photos of, like when chapters host book clubs or film screenings that sometimes looks like them getting together in their living room or a picnic in the park and talking about a book, or talking about maybe one of the books that World Beyond War has published, and we can provide support with that. Hosting film screenings, whether online or in person with a local cinema, lots of partnerships with other local groups, whether that's joining their events, speaking at their rallies, speaking at their book launches, that kind of thing. Lots of media work that chapters get involved in. They might write letters to the editor, they might write op-eds. The smaller the place you live, the easier it is to publish in your local newspaper or media, and that's a huge opportunity. Lots of posting on social media for the chapters that do use social media. And I'll just read through some of these other examples. Chapters have joined walkathons or bikeathons. They've hosted webinars, tabled at events like festivals, farmers markets, conferences, etc. They've met with elected government officials, have published and distributed and got people to sign on to petitions, and have marched in parades or local protests in their town. Those are just a few examples. Chapters have tried these and many more. Really, the sky is the limit in terms of what is possible and what makes sense for chapters to do based on where they are based. I'll maybe just wrap with that for now, and happy to answer questions about any of these things later.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. And again, Rachel is the Canada organizer on staff. So if you're in Canada, you'll probably be working with her. We also have a Latin America organizer on staff, Gabriela Aguirre, who you'll be working with if you're in Latin America. And then if you're in any other country, you'll be working with me. So now I want to pass it over to Guy Feugap, who is our World Beyond War Cameroon chapter coordinator, and we'll talk about his experience starting the Cameroon chapter. So please go ahead, Guy.
Thank you, Greta. Greetings to everyone. The coordinator of the Cameroon chapter. I'm going to take some few minutes to share with you some of the things we have been doing in Cameroon. I just want to show the screen so that you can see my country, Cameroon. Some of the things about Cameroon for a World Beyond War. Yes, Cameroon is located in Central Africa. It's a country with 10 regions that has a colonial history. Was first colonized by German, and after was dominated by France and Germany, and got independence in 1960. But since then, Cameroon has always have some beautiful country, a peaceful country, with not a lot of ethnic groups, over 250, and people happy to live together despite the diversity. And that diversity was actually the riches of Cameroon. So, but it happened that in the last 15 years, Cameroon is going into conflict And from the map, you see there are zones in red that we really have armed conflict, 3 regions with armed conflict. And because of the conflict in the neighboring countries, there are a lot of refugees coming in Cameroon. And there are also a lot of people going from the conflict-affected regions to find a safer place in other regions. And it makes other conflict dynamics, people living with the refugees or the internal displaced persons, make it difficult for people to survive in this situation. And there are a lot of tension in this context. So amongst the root causes of the conflict that we have in Cameroon, we have the colonization, we have the political transition that is not happening. We have the same president of the republic since 41 years, the same president, and there's a lot of corruption, poor governance. This make people not be able to speak out. They cannot express themselves freely. They cannot demonstrate. Yes, and that's why I mentioned here the civil shrinking space, because the political parties, civil society organization, and peace activists are not very free to speak as they can because of this political context. So the conflict has a lot of impact. Many people dead in our country. And there are a lot of children not going to school because of the conflict. So 3 years ago, in the 2 regions that are affected in the conflict, about 6,100 children could not go to school in those 2 regions only, just to see how the conflict affects the people in Cameroon. So in this context, we tried to establish World Beyond War in Cameroon 3 years ago, and we were mobilizing organizations and volunteers, youth, to speak for peace, to find alternative solutions to violence. We've had peaceful solutions to propose to government, to stakeholders, to anyone who can support peace in Cameroon. We have sharing ideas of peace and non-violence. So we have 3 main programs in which we focus. We focus on peace education. We focus on disarmament, mostly campaigns, and have environment, work on environment advocacy to preserve our environment. And in terms of strategy, we do networking, we do advocacy, and we do awareness and many campaigns. So we act in Cameroon particularly as there are lots of organizations that have the same vision of promoting peace, that we partner with them. We use their spaces. We organize the event. We co-organize events to make our vision of ending all wars be understood and heard in Cameroon. So one example of the action is that we joined the program on peace education and action for impact with 10 youth who were actually trained during the 6 weeks online, and after that have 8 other weeks to develop a peace project. And they actually conducted a research to find out how more youth and women can be included in conflict resolutions in Cameroon. So we involve our youth because I personally, I have experience in working with the human peace and security agenda and the youth peace and security agenda. And with this knowledge, we have been training many youth to be involved in peace processes in Cameroon, to be interested in these processes, and to have their voices said in the national dialogue processes that happen in Cameroon. Yes, in terms of some of campaigns, we have a disarmament campaign to stop the killer robots, because our country is actually threatened by lots of weapons that generally come from outside. And we use this opportunity to campaign against the killer robot and the nuclear weapons to bring our country stand against this weapon and participate in any international event where they are taking decision to stop this weapon. So we want our government to be in those spaces. Yes, we do not only focus in Cameroon, we have a vision for Africa. We have a vision for Africa. Here, for example, I was in Kenya for 1 month, from March, April, 1 month, for a residency with another organization to foster youth participation in democracy to prevent conflict and build peace. We are actually looking for how to create space for youth to participate in the democratic processes and to prevent violence. In the example of Cameroon is that as the elections are coming, there are many young having hate speech, and our work is try to make them explain themselves freely, but preventing violence. So this was in Kenya, and we have lots of activities there with young from different settings. And we also have the vision to build World Beyond War movement in Africa, and we are really working to expand this. Cameroon was the first chapter to be created in Africa, and since then we have been trying to share this vision of peace in our continent, and many countries have joined as chapters. Many others are in the process of becoming chapters, and we have an event coming in November, and we really want many people to be here to that event to see what peace perspectives we have from Africa to contribute to ending wars in our continent, and also to contribute to world peace. This is actually the objective of this conference, and we want to use this space to talk to many people on the ideal of ending wars of all sorts. So globally, we also contribute to world peace, as I said earlier. And there is a campaign that was started in Ghana called Fix the Country. It started in Ghana, and there is a space with peace practitioners in Africa, in Germany, and we are using this space to try to see how with the dialogue North-South can be improved to make every country feel respected. Yes, that is briefly some of the things that we do. We do even more than that, and in a few minutes I could share this aspect. So we are available. You can write to us. You can contact us to know more on our work. You can invite us to join events, campaigns. Yeah, we are here to end all wars from our African perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Guy. Guy has been an inspiration, and as he said, thanks to Guy, there have been many other chapters growing in Africa and the upcoming World Beyond War Africa conference in November. I put the link in the chat for that, so we hope you sign up for that as well. And next up, I want to bring up Sim Gomri, our World Beyond War Montreal chapter coordinator. So please go ahead, Sim.
Can you share your screen for the
Rachel will be sharing it for you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys. I don't know where my share went. I can't figure it out. But anyway. So hi everybody. My name's Kim Gomri. I'm the coordinator of Montreal for a World Beyond War. Great presentation by Guy just now, by the way. I love that there's all these people present in a lot of the photos. There's like huge groups working together with people. It's impressive. I'm also pleased that we have now a new Senegal chapter, but I digress. Okay, we're a chapter that was launched in November 2021. And the context that I am in Montreal, Quebec, Canada here is we're one of 5 Canadian chapters. But I'm in a city that's a university town, a lot of universities and cégeps in town, and lots of activity for the environment, for peace and social justice generally. So just to name a few other peace groups, there's a coalition called the Échec à la Guerre, which has 32 members, mostly unions. Mouvement Québécois pour la Paix, Artistes pour la Paix. We have many communist groups, student groups, independent Jewish voices, Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, and a lot of people too working independently for peace. So it's a big cohort. About me, I'm a Montreal activist. I was active in Montreal for animal rights and environment before getting interested in peace activism. I'm an avid reader, gardener. I like documentary films and films generally. And I guess I have to admit I'm an idealist. I love animals and I love nature. So this is what I think you could consider if you're thinking of starting a new chapter. Of course, everyone's different and you might have your own ideas, but I would suggest evaluate your strengths, know your context, your milieu, and its culture, and research other local and international peace groups and reach out to them, and then find your niche, because as we can see, you'll see probably today, no two chapters are alike. You have to find your own way to be in the peace ecosystem. And why World Beyond War? Well, we kind of know from Greta's presentation, but when I looked at it, I saw it as a gateway to the international peace community. Fantastic. I've learned fantastic, dedicated and caring staff who are so helpful and they're always responsive when I have a question or a concern. Training, book clubs, films, webinars, events. It's a whirlwind of activities with World Beyond War. I love their Mythbusters series. Say that 10 times fast, Mythbusters. And it's an uncompromising commitment to world peace, which appeals to the idealist in me. I like the idea that we want to abolish war and we don't accept war anywhere in any form. This was the Marxist-Leninist party of, it's the Conservative Party, basically, a rally that they had in the summer. So I often join in and invite my other chapter members to various rallies. There's always something going on in the city any given day of the week, and lots of peace rallies too. So there I am somewhere in the crowd at the back there. That's the Raging Grannies at the CanSec. The CanSec is a big arms fair that happens every spring. So we went, and one of our members, that's one of my members, the second person from the left there, at the rally in June, which Rachel organized from A to Z. One of our big issues that we're dealing with is the nuclear ban treaty. I think a couple people talked about that. So we wrote to the government in March. We wrote to Melanie Jolet in October of last year, and we participated in the Canada-wide Week of Action. Another big issue, as I think Greta mentioned or Rachel mentioned, was the no-armed drones purchase. Canada wants to purchase surveillance drones. So we did the cones, not drones. I think you've seen a picture of that already. Oh dear. So sorry, I didn't review my my diapo very well, but some of the things I would suggest is learn all you can through webinars, training, reading, films, get Action Network skills, learn to use it, partner with local groups if you can. Reach out to other chapter coordinators, and try to have an equal balance of participating in online and in-person things so that you're kind of in both those worlds, if you can. Use all the resources that are available to us through World Beyond War training courses, webinars, campaigns, book clubs. There's a book club coming up that I'm looking forward to. Committees, Action Network, and what did I write at the bottom there? Don't forget your, I forget what I wrote. Yeah, the chapters page. You can work on your chapters page. Thank you, Rachel. So that's we have a Twitter account. Some people have Instagram too. I recently met the Senegal new chapter and they're using Instagram. So I'm not on Instagram, but find your niche. That's my email, or you can also write to Montreal at WorldBeyondWar.org. And that's our page. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sim. And thanks everyone for the questions that are coming in. I've been trying to answer some of those in the chat. We will also try to get to some of those at the end. And finally, last but not least, we have Janet Parker, chapter co-coordinator for the World Beyond War Madison, Wisconsin chapter in the United States. And Janet, I will pull up your slides, but please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, hi, everyone. Glad to be part of this. My name is Janet Parker. I'm here in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's a university town. And we have about 40,000 students at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And along with Stefania Sani, who's my co-chapter coordinator, we started last fall as a World Beyond War chapter. We had been doing a lot of anti-war organizing around the war in Ukraine since the spring before that. And also both of us have been doing anti-war organizing for decades, really. So we have done a lot of public events as part of our chapter, and just rolling some pictures here of some of our public events, all of them raising up the idea of war abolition and speaking up for diplomacy to end the war in Ukraine and all wars. So we've done a whole bunch of many dozens of public actions, some of which get coverage on TV and radio. We often put out press releases, and we've gotten articles and letters to the editor published, quite a few of them. I want to pause the photos and roll a spot from the news. On Sunday, we did a candlelight vigil calling for peace in Ukraine with another group, an interfaith group in town. And well, I'll show you that for a minute here. This is just got on our local TV news.
Advocates held a candlelight vigil for peace in Ukraine outside the state capital. They say their goal is to
We're
get
not seeing
lawmakers'
the video.
attention and urge them to work toward ending the war. Brief to inspire hope.
Sorry about that. Let me try again.
And meanwhile, so a lot of times we do walks together. Oh, good. Here goes.
Advocates held a candlelight vigil for peace in Ukraine outside the state capital. They say their goal is to get lawmakers' attention and urge them to work toward ending the war. New at 10, Jarrell Ballard has you covered on how organizers are allowing their grief to inspire hope.
And we are singing, singing for our lives.
On the steps of the Wisconsin state capitol, several people gathered Sunday to shine a light for the victims impacted by the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Well, we're getting together to raise our voices that we want peace in Ukraine, peace in Russia.
This vigil is just one event in a week of activities happening across the country as part of Global Days of Action. Hundreds of activism groups are coming together to spread peace, love, and kindness.
It feels wonderful. It feels so inviting, and it feels kind of like this transient, liminal type space with all these different types of people that come from different walks of life and different ages.
Several people attending the vigil are urging Wisconsin lawmakers to vote against any additional funding for the war in Ukraine, also asking them to stop distributing weapons, adding in part that the only winners in war are weapon makers.
This anti-war movement is important because war is actually an extremely profitable industry, and we wouldn't be egging on foreign conflicts if people weren't getting rich off of it.
And with this war still having no end in sight,
and we are singing, singing for our lives.
This vigil serves as a reminder that you can always find the light at the end of the tunnel. Reporting in Madison, Jarrell Ballard, 27 News.
Thank you, Rachel.
Not everyone.
And we can go back to our photos. So that was, did a press release, did the vigil. It didn't, there wasn't a ton of work that went into that, but it was good coverage. And as often happens on our local TV news, they will read your press release. So it's really nice. You write it up and their anchor will read the press release. And I thought that Jarrell Ballard, that reporter did awesome. So often we do walks together. We call them war abolition walks. So we'll get out with our banners and walk. And we started doing that a year and a half ago, when after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we've been doing them ever since, but then we've also gotten into doing a lot of other activities. So the walks was kind of, we used to do them every week. And then we would have speakers at some of our walks. And especially if somebody came to our events or met somebody who was interested, who was young or dynamic, had an interesting message from another part of the world, we'd ask them to speak and do that as part of one of the walks. We've put a lot of attention on our members of Congress. We often go to their offices, and we just almost met with we had a meeting scheduled on Tuesday with our U.S. representative. He had to cancel because he was deposing the Speaker of the House. He had to go to the votes. So we missed that, but we'll reschedule with him. We put a lot of attention on him, asking him to stop funding the war in Ukraine. So often there are only a few of us at our events. Sometimes it's a dozen or maybe 2 dozen. Sometimes it's 3 of us, but that's fine. We love being out and we love being visible. We've done tons of tabling over the summer at Farmers Market and on campus, and it's been so productive. We've met a good handful of people who've then gotten involved with our work, and people who we didn't know before. And I think we've made an impression on many thousands of people who've seen us out there and taken our materials and that kind of thing, our flyers and seen our banners. We've had 2 chapter events that are letters to the editor writing parties. We got together, chatted a little bit about current events related to the war in Ukraine, and then got into small groups and wrote letters and helped each other with that. And 5 of those letters were published, so that was really fun. Many of the people involved in anti-war activism here in Madison are elderly, but we've heard a lot of interest from college students too. So we're about to start a little fundraiser to hire 1 or several students to do organizing on campus. There isn't a student organizing group, but we're hoping to spark one, and maybe spark student organizing around the country, because I think the situation is similar. There are lots of people of all ages, including young people who oppose the war in Ukraine, but not a lot of sort of institutional structure for that. I'll just say a little bit about what we don't do. We have no social media presence or online discussion, and we don't hold like open business meetings. Both of these is because that we found in the past that, at least here in Madison, those formats can really take us backwards, with people having a lot of conflict on different ideas of what to do and arguments about finer points that turn off a lot of people who might come to one meeting, hear an argument, and say, I'm not coming back. And so those things sort of have served to shrink the movement in the past. So instead, what we do is a few of us chat about what event we'd like to do next, and then we announce those events to our email list and by text, and then just have the public event. So we love being a World Beyond War chapter. It's been a huge blessing to not have to come up with organizational goals or a mission statement and that kind of thing, but instead we've been able to just sign on to this war abolition message and get to work. It seems like sometimes, sometimes the more that people talk about complicated issues, the less they might agree on them. So it's been wonderful to not have to talk through exactly what should our website say, or what should we be, trying to, have our mission be. The idea of war abolition has been such a vital boost for us too. We don't get into debates about which side of any war is more guilty. We try not to take sides. For instance, in Ukraine, our position is that Ukraine and Russia and NATO and the US need to stop killing each other and start talking, need to start negotiating. And of course, the history is complicated, but our focus is pushing for nonviolent solutions. So I'll end saying a huge thank you to Greta, who helps us just about every day. She set up our action network, which is how we email our group, and that's been fabulous. That is so efficient, much better than having a Google group or sending emails to a long list of email addresses. We talk about World Beyond War board member Yuri Shelyazenko every day, and the whole worldwide network. I think that we're strong together. And I'm so grateful to Guy and to Kim and to Rachel and Greta and everyone here on the call. Your vision and your inspiration and fellowship really make it possible for us to act here locally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you, everyone. Very inspiring. And thanks for everyone for joining us. So we know we're almost at 1 hour and we got through all the presentations. So if you need to leave, it's okay. But we are going to stay on a little bit and answer some questions. And we are recording all of this and we'll send it out afterwards. But before we get into the questions, I just want to say, what are the next steps? Just to give a few next steps after you've watched this presentation. So one next step is that we have an Organizing 101 course. This is a free online course that we've developed, and it basically introduces you a little bit deeper to World Beyond War's mission, campaigns, what we do, what is a chapter, but then also kind of some introductory organizing concepts like how to develop a strategy and tactics and things like that. So we highly recommend that anyone who's interested in starting a chapter takes that online course. You can do it on your own time. It's totally online. Do it as fast or as slow as you want. So I will put the link for that in the chat. And again, we will send all of this out in the email afterwards as well. So that's one next step that we hope you all take. Also, I should say, when you sign up for the course, you get a coupon code for a free copy of World Beyond War's ebook. And that is also another recommended step, is to read that ebook. That's the AGSS that we were talking about earlier, which really lays out World Beyond War's blueprint for how we envision the world to get to a world beyond war. And then in terms of other next steps, please do get in contact with us and we will connect you, if you're in Canada with Rachel, if you're in Latin America with Gabrielle, if you're anywhere else with me, and then we can have those conversations one-on-one to kind of develop a strategy for your chapter, what it's going to look like, and maybe planning a kickoff meeting and all of those details. So with that, let's get into the Q&A. And anyone, the presenters here, chapter coordinators, and Rachel, please just unmute yourself if you want to answer one of these questions, because I can't see you all on my screen. So just unmute and chime in. So one of the questions here is, how do you raise the funds to make your signage, your t-shirts, that kind of thing? And I'll just start out and say that, yeah, all of our chapters are volunteer run. World Beyond War does not have very much funding because we are a grassroots network primarily run by volunteers. We have some limited funds where we've been able to reimburse chapters for some expenses like printing a banner. But largely chapters have been able to leverage their own funds, and we do provide fundraising trainings to give chapters some tips and tricks of how to do that. But I'd love to hear, for those who have done some fundraising. Sim, I know you've done some, if you want to chime in with some things that you've done.
Yes, last year we did a fundraiser. I had done many bicycle-a-thons for different causes in the past, so we did a bicycle-thon for World Beyond War, and we had used the Online Action Network tool to collect all the donations, which went directly to World Beyond War. And I regret to say we haven't done any fundraisers since then. That was last fall, but certainly. As far as fundraising locally for our local actions, to be honest, I've just been paying out of pocket for things like printing flyers and things like that, or quite often for a rally, people bring their own posters, or if it's organized by one of the big, like the coalition, they will sometimes supply posters. When we did the war against the Peace in Ukraine rally. So that's how we've been functioning. And I think you have to be creative and use your imagination, and probably other people have ideas too about how they fundraise.
I just want to say, Kim, I don't think you need to be sheepish about not doing much fundraising. And I think your chapter is an amazing example of how much you actually can do without, some people sort of feel like first we have to focus on raising all this money or doing all this stuff. But in fact, you guys started by like getting out on the street and getting involved. And I think over time, if you want to do certain things that are going to cost more money, and you don't have to pay out of pocket for things, we can support you in fundraising for them. But if you start to feel like we need to do these things that need more money, to fundraise for those things as needed is personally an approach I would recommend, versus sort of saying, okay, we need to start by fundraising all of this money.
That's certainly true. We haven't needed to fundraise really. It hasn't come to a point where we always, like with the ice cream cones, not drones, we just brought some ice cream, and it's a different way. Like normally I'm giving to, charities here and there, and I'll say, well, okay, that was my donation. I bought ice cream, and you have a lot of fun doing it. So it's kind of, I agree. You just have to be entrepreneurial and go ahead and do things, and probably well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I won't tell you about the idea that we have coming up for next year. So I'll stop now. Okay.
Thanks, Janet or Guy. Did you want to chime in on this?
Yes, similar to what Kim has experienced, I think coming from the privilege of, for one thing, I'm gainfully unemployed. So is Stefania, my chapter co-coordinator. So we have time, and that is a great privilege. And then also have spending money. So I have, we make our own, pay for the flyers and have bought the banners. We haven't had any kind of organizational pot of money. And so we're very lucky that way, very, very, very privileged. And now that we're about to start raising money to pay some students, we are going to, for the first time, ask World Beyond War to hold that money for us and pay the students. Thanks.
Yeah, and just chiming in on that with the Action Network platform that Sim and Janet have talked a little bit about. We're not going to get into that in detail today because that's a whole other training, but that is a platform. It's a third-party digital organizing platform, and World Beyond War has a subscription to that, so our chapters are able to use it for free. So that's what Janet is referencing. We're able to kind of set up that technical infrastructure to facilitate the fundraisers or the petitions or the emails or the texting blasts, that kind of thing. So yeah, Guy, did you want to chime in on this?
It is actually raining here a lot. I'm not sure you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, all fine. So maybe last words to say I'm available to answer further question after this session. So I heard someone from Cameroon on the call. Yes, I will invite her to also reach out to me so that we try to connect from Cameroon and work on this together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Guy. Yeah, and if anyone has to leave, feel free to drop off. We know we've hit the 1 hour mark, but we'll stay on a little bit longer to answer some more questions. So there was a question which was, are there any things that we can do with the United States government to assist World Beyond War, I guess, in advancing anti-war policies? And yeah, I think as you heard through the presentations, there's different tactics that chapters have used that are targeting elected officials, whether it's petitions, direct meetings, lobby meetings with Congress members. So that kind of differs again for each chapter. Some chapters do take that focus and work on policies. Some might not. Some might work more on education or different things. So it kind of depends on your context and what you want to focus on. But anyone want to chime in on that? Nope. Okay, we can move on then to the next question. So there is a question here about, are there cross-governmental organizations assisting in stopping the wars within and between countries involved in conflicts? And I think the answer to that is World Beyond War is one of those. I mean, that's the purpose of World Beyond War, was founded, as I said, almost 10 years ago with the notion that we had to be global. We're not going to be able to stop the entire institution of war from one country alone. And so that's why we have this decentralized chapter structure where we can have people who are in countries affected directly by conflict sharing their stories and testimonials. We can have people whose countries are waging the wars and dropping the bombs and sharing their stories and testimonials and calling on their governments to stop funding this. So we want to have all of those perspectives, and that is the importance of acting internationally. And we have other partners as well that are international partners. There's War Resisters International, for example, and many other, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. So there's a whole network of international peace and anti-war organizations that we collaborate with to amplify these efforts. If anyone else has thoughts on this, feel free to unmute. The other thing I'll just say here, as we're kind of talking about partnerships, is that, we know that one organization alone is not going to abolish the institution of war, so partnerships are really crucial, and I think some of the presenters mentioned that. But a lot of what we do is working in coalition with other organizations. And I don't know if anyone wants to chime in and give a specific example of that, but basically World Beyond War has really often played that role of a networker or a coalition builder, where we've been able to collaborate and again, use some of our technical resources, our promotional resources, our organizing assistance, but to amplify the work of other organizations. So if you're on this call and you're listening in and you're already affiliated with another organization, you might consider partnering with us. And as a reminder, from the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about that there are chapters which take on the name of World Beyond War, such as WorldBeyondWar Cameroon. And then there are affiliates which have their own name, like Canadian Voice of Women for Peace is one in Canada, who are their own organization, but they partner with us and collaborate on different campaigns and events. So that's something to keep in mind as you're listening in. If you have an organization in mind, if you're part of an organization, do reach out to us and we can talk about collaboration.
Rashid has a question.
We are not taking questions from raised hands, so if you could just put it in the chat, that would be best for today's format. Thank you. And I see Rachel has put the link in the chat for the Find Chapter webpage. There's a map where you can find all of our chapters and also our affiliates. So do check that out, see if there's a chapter or affiliate in your area, or if not, contact us. And there's a question here from David Newman in the chat. If a global security system is formed to replace war, will a global peace force be armed? If not, what will protect the global human family? I see Sim is shaking her head there. I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Well, I guess you're going to find this a very simplistic answer, David, but I mean, if nobody has arms, then there's nothing to protect yourself against. The idea of, of arming ourselves to protect ourselves against violence is like planning for violence to protect against violence. It really seems nonsensical when you think about it. I know that, yeah, I'm an abolitionist. I don't believe in, I don't think we need arms. I think that if we would put down our arms and start to look at nonviolence, and there's a great book about that. If you want to read one of the World Beyond War founders, David, not David Swanson.
No, David Hartsoe.
David Hartsoe. He took nonviolence to heart from a very young age, like from the time he was 8 years old, and he lived his life. He's 90 now or 90 something. He lived his life showing nonviolence. He was arrested many times, but he really accomplished miraculous things. I recommend his memoir. It's very inspiring. And there's a book club in November with him hosting. For me, that's like meeting the Pope, so I'm really, really excited about that book club, and a little bit, I don't want to meet this man because I'm kind of in awe of him, but I think it's great. I think you have to really, you have to just accept that nonviolence is the only way forward for humanity. And ancient cultures knew that, and first indigenous peoples know that, and everybody knows that, but the people in the West that are leading us down the road to doomsday. So anyway else.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a complicated question. We have lots of materials. So, World Beyond War's book that we've referenced, the AGSS, that lays out what we call the alternative global security system and all the steps that would be needed. As we know, abolition is a long-term goal. And so we talk about divestment, disarmament, international law, closing military bases, and all the steps that would be needed, the use of, unarmed peacekeeping forces, the use of civilian-based defense. So do check out the book. We can put some of these resources in the follow-up email that lays out that blueprint for how we envision getting there. And also, I should say that our conference, we just had our World Beyond War annual global conference, was actually on this topic of nonviolent resistance. So we can put that link in the chat there. That was No War 2023. And that has lots of great examples of what to do when tanks are rolling in and we don't support using arms. But there's also a question here. Are the affiliates in the country head of the chapter automatically? No. So that's what I'm trying to distinguish between. Hopefully it's clear that the affiliate is its own existing organization, like Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Veterans for Peace, and it has its own name and brand, and everything is separate from World Beyond War, and that partners with us. And then a chapter is using the name of World Beyond War, like we've heard, World Beyond War Montreal, World Beyond War Madison, etc. And the chapter is using the logo of World Beyond War, working very closely with the staff, etc. So those are two distinct things, but they often partner together in the local context. So hopefully that answers
Affiliates are
your question.
kind of like our organizational friends. Like if there's another organization that does work that's similar to us and we want to be friends with them and work with them, then we use affiliates as a way of really recognizing like, hey, this is a cool group that shares a lot of our values and we want to work with them. But it's still a separate group that runs its own thing. The chapters are part of World Beyond War and are not separate at all. They're just the local chunks of World Beyond War.
Yeah. Yeah, Janet?
Yeah, this is rolling back to that last question and discussion around nonviolence and how to protect in time of war and that kind of thing. We've been having a discussion about this, and my co-chapter coordinator Stefania said something that I really appreciated. She said, war is organized roughly. She said, war is organized mass murder done by governments. That various responses to that, violent and nonviolent, that may be more in the, she used the term struggle, but that although you know, I guess my feeling is I support total nonviolence, but my orientation is towards telling governments to stop doing organized mass murder of other people. Period. That's where my focus is. Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, I think we should wrap up soon. And I also see a final question here about WhatsApp. Is there a WhatsApp group? So that is a good question because it kind of leads into a larger discussion, which is that each chapter chooses the method that it uses to organize locally. Some chapters do have their own WhatsApp groups and they find that as to be a great way to organize and communicate. Some chapters use Facebook groups, some use email groups. So that can just kind of be, dependent on your chapter and what works best for your members. And again, that's, largely the role of the staff members like myself, Rachel, Gabrielle in Latin America, is to help you go through those questions and, set up whatever technical infrastructure you need to get going. So with that, I think we should wrap up. Again, we will send out links and recordings and all that afterwards. Maybe let's just do a round robin and any final thoughts from our presenters. So Rachel, you first.
I just wanted to say that in some cases, someone comes to us sort of feeling like, hey, there's no peace group, or there's a gap that I think World Beyond War would be really great where I live, but I don't know if just me, if I can make this happen. And then often we'll say, well, actually, we might actually know some other people in your city who've come to us in the same way, so maybe we can match you up. Or maybe we help you host an initial kind of meet and greet, and we email out our full list of World Beyond War members or contacts in the area and see who shows up. And maybe 15 fantastic people show up and you start a chapter. So for people, chapters do require coordinators, ideally a couple per chapter, but people shouldn't feel like they have to start the whole thing by themselves. If you're interested and you have some time to put towards a chapter, chat with us about it, and maybe we can do some matchmaking and match you up with other folks where you are who can work on it with you. These are group projects, so they require starting out with maybe just a few people and ideally growing to have a really good local crew. But again, each chapter looks really different. I really appreciated what Janet shared about how they have a really core group of decision makers who come to consensus and then put things out publicly. Other chapters have sort of a bigger group and there's no obvious sort of core, and others are really led by kind of one person who then brings in others. So yeah, lots of possibilities.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Guy, do you have any final thoughts as we do our round robin?
Yes, final thing, yes, we just to to remind us, I just posted in the chat that everyone should join us in November, 23, 25th November, for the first Africa conference. It is virtual, and we hope to make it physical in the future years. So we are just starting, and we want everyone's support to make it happen. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sim, final thoughts?
Well, just thank you to everyone and for attending. And I hope that we're going to see some new chapters, especially Canadian chapters. That person in Winnipeg, who was it? David? If you want to start a chapter, that would be great. I talked to a lot of people out west at the No War 2023, and we were having a lovely conversation with Conscience Canada and all those people. And it would be so fun if we had more chapters across Canada to kind of fill in the gaps. So go for it, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Awesome. Janet?
Thanks all, and drop me a line. I'd love to talk if I can be of help, answer questions or brainstorm together.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much to our presenters. Thank you for attending. We will send out the recording, including the links that we've talked about, such as the link to the Organizing 101 course. So I want to emphasize that again. That's kind of a good next step if you're interested to take that course and dive a little bit deeper into organizing strategies and tactics and all that.
And I didn't mean to say just Canada, people everywhere. Join WorldBeyondWar.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.